What is up, remodeled lovers? This cup of joe coming to you in video formats. I've been reflecting a lot on mine and Jess's relationship, our non-sexual marriage in particular. People have asked me about it and wanted to hear more, and I've been writing a little bit and reflecting and more pointedly kind of examining my feelings surrounding it. And props to our polyamorous men's support group, Dudes with Feelings, for encouraging me on this front. Now, in general, I experience an air of intrigue surrounding our non-sexual marriage setup. Whenever I mention it or reveal to someone that that's what it is, I can feel these questions kind of simmering within them. Questions, mind you, that oftentimes aren't really asked out loud, but I can just sense of, oh, what's that like? Or do you wish sex was still a part of it? Or will it be again? Are there ever any romantic moments? How do you feel about all of this? And first of all, I want to state that I, in the same feeling as Jessica, I do not desire her in that way as she doesn't me. And so that's a very important thing to kind of state from the top. I will add that when these questions are kind of out there but not really asked, it seems like people want to be respectful and not ask questions and make it seem like they're othering our relationship or putting it into this weird category of thing to be like scientifically observed or something. And so I appreciate that to an extent. But also we can ask some direct questions and normalize it and talk about it. And that's what I want to do here, illustrating what this is like with two perks and two drawbacks to this setup. Not necessarily particular to Jessica herself, but just the nature of our relationship with this kind of a connection. Well, what does that look like? So, perk number one is that being in a non-sexual marriage makes polyamory easier. The thing that a lot of people struggle with, the primary couple experiencing jealousy, insecurity when others are out there exploring, has been all but neutralized in our relationship. When she meets someone new or introduces another person, particularly a dude, particularly a tall, strikingly good-looking dude, I'm far less triggered on it now than I have been in the past. Sometimes I would wrestle with it for a while. Sometimes my jealousy would be like a minor character in the movie of my life, just kind of stirring up trouble every now and again. But now I liken jealousy to making a cameo appearance. It shows up and then it goes away. And so it just makes all of that thorny kind of karmic entanglement that a lot of couples get into, it just takes all of that off the table in an interesting way. By contrast, when we're doing peer support sessions and I see other couples struggling on this front, that of the primary couple's sexual relationship being kind of the focal point of the problem in some ways. First of all, my heart goes out to these couples because that must be incredibly difficult. I mean, I've faced it myself, but at the same time, with our setup now, it's something I feel very far away from. And when I hear it, I am reminded of some of the really strong benefits of our relationship, mine and Jess's, that I don't experience that, or I don't struggle with that. And it's just made the integration of other partners into our lives simpler, and we're able to kind of talk about it as buddies, like, ooh, who are you meeting and how's that going? What do you think of them? What's their thing? What are they into? And what are you learning from this relationship? We're very proactive, we're very alchemical with how we tend to look at life and our relationships. And so it's become more of like a friendship buddy type thing. We've become Gilmore Girls, if you will. Something I even mentioned early on in our journey is something I resented, something I didn't want, and now I fully embrace it. I think it's fun. And I don't fucking care if people think it's girly to kind of chum it up a little bit with my partner about the people she's banging. I think that that's childish and missing out on a great bonding opportunity, quite frankly. I want to acknowledge here that if I still desired sex with Jess, or she still desired it with me, and we're in a non-sexual marriage, not getting something that we want, but are able to kind of trade off on, then this would be a very different thing. This would be probably something that would make polyamory more difficult. But in our case, it makes it easier. Perk number 2 is that I feel like our relationship has just in general improved. Without sex on the table, it has forced me to think about, well, how can I show up in other ways that are more supportive and loving and affectionate? And things like just rocking my parenting all the more, and taking care of my domestic shit and responsibilities, and just in general being a thriving, growing, interesting human being. Making epic dinners, giving really awesome back rubs, the good kind, and just trying to be an overall supportive and loving force in her life. We're side by side partners, buddies on this experience, this journey called life. And I think that without sex as a kind of distraction, which it primarily had been in some respects, because we were never really that compatible, after the early years, with that kind of undone or taken off of the table, it just makes me more prone to a kind of collaborative spirit, less kind of combative when it comes to how our emotions can get triggered on these fronts based off of different sexual dynamics. And so I think we're just better partners as a result. We're more friend-like, and I think I see her in a more realistic way as someone that I'm trying to be there for and support, rather than someone who makes me feel a certain way. I think it allows me to come more from, well, what am I bringing to this relationship versus what am I getting? And if I come from there, then the things that I get will naturally fall into place because of what I give and what I put out there and how I want to show up, which will reinforce the good things that will result in return. Now, this is not all a bed of roses, right? We've got some difficulties too as well. The first drawback to this setup is actually the inverse of the first perk, which is that it makes polyamory harder, in the sense that, well, now sex has been outsourced outside of the house for both of us. And so that means logistically we're quite often away trying to get those needs met. I mean, we can literally bring people into our house and explore there, but at the same time we're both having to make sex a high priority in our other dynamics because we don't have that in our nesting relationship. And so by virtue of that, it limits the other kinds of connections that we can make, new friends or queer platonic situations, romantic-ish sort of vibes. We have to forego if there's no sex involved because we have less time, especially with kids. There's only so much room that we got. Our time is finite. So we're likelier to, if we're picking and choosing which dynamics serve us best at any given time, for my money, I suppose, I'm going to choose, if I have to choose in a situation, I'm going to choose a dynamic that has high sexual chemistry but little chemistry elsewhere, versus a dynamic that has high chemistry in a lot of other areas but not in the sexual space. And so in a sense, it kind of inhibits the possibilities of the various relationships that we have. And so in that sense, polyamory can be a little bit harder. The second drawback is added judgment. On top of being polyamorous, for which we are heavily judged. I mean, look at when some of our stuff ends up on the wrong side of TikTok, for instance. A lot of the haters come through. And on top of that, when these same folks find out that we're in a non-sexual setup, you'd think that that would be a point for us in their mind, that the thing that they object to, us having sex with more than one person outside of each other, then you'd think that that would kind of neutralize their critiques, since we don't have a sexual dynamic. but it actually brings more judgment because it confuses them and baffles them as to why we are still together. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up in their world. And they can't see that we're each other's most compatible partner in so many ways, especially with children in the picture. And this confusion and bafflement, if you will, is all the more insulting because they literally cannot see another way. Our existence literally offends and triggers them. And so it's hard not to be impacted by all that. Yes, it rolls off your back. Yes, you develop a thick skin. Yes, fuck those people and their judgments. But that's not to say that those words don't hurt. That the things that the arrows they're slinging aren't going to make some kind of scar or impact. It certainly does. And it's all the more frustrating when you think that they would be in support, but not actually, because it only seems more othered, I think, from their point of view, more strange, more worth judging. And it kind of makes me sad for humans in general when I encounter this, because it seems as though our perception for what relationships could be is just so narrow that anything that falls outside of that, it is a deep threat to stare down, if you will, and have to deal with, well, how can this be if I am living this way, kind of a thing. There's lots I have to say. And I feel like the 2 perks and the 2 drawbacks will be good for this portion, but certainly more to come. I will say this in closing. I wish that our marriage wasn't so different from everyone else's. I wish it was just normalized the way that it is. I wish it wasn't so inspiring. I wish we had a world where its impact was simply reinforcing things that are good rather than being something that's so standout or so kind of revolutionary, I guess, in a sense. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's not the world that we have. The world that we have kind of demands that I speak up in my own defense and explain myself. And that's tiring. That's annoying. But it's also a chance to anchor in some better words, some better concepts, to provide community and familiarity with those who might be in a similar situation and reach out to them, and in the process imbue a stronger sense of self. And it is for these reasons that we are here to remodel love.